political analyst, Professor Seepe. Prof, good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. Listening to the ANC's Deputy President, David Mabuza, and the President this week as they were in Limpopo, some of the issues are quite common when you listen to what they're saying. There's issues of service delivery, there's factional battles that they talk about, there's corruption that they also talk about. But I wonder, what kind of ANC is going into this year's 110th birthday?
Well, the ANC that is going into the 110th birthday is an ANC that has been defeated in the polls. It may have gotten the numbers, but it is an ANC that used to say in the past, it is a leader of society. Society has decided that you're not the leader. So we're talking about a weakened ANC, and where the message has been sent by society that whatever the ANC has been doing in the last 4 years, in the last 5 years, we are not impressed. The people are saying, we've given you enough time to show that you can still lead, but we've come to a determination that maybe we need to look elsewhere. So that is a message that has come from the electorate. And what is even worse, it comes at the time when even the president of the ANC was being booed by ordinary people. But at the same time, you also had the president of the ANC or people saying this is a person who is very popular and more popular than the ANC. So effectively, the ANC has a duty to start listening to people on the ground than the rented consultants who are misleading it, that you are on the right path. The ANC went into elections already riven by divisions. By the way, this is a party that could not even do the most basic thing, which is to pay its own workers. So if you're a party that says you are a party of workers, and yet you cannot even pay your own comrades, the people that work for you, and you are the very same party that came with legislation that is very important, that talks about their basic conditions of employment, and you violate that. So the ANC must go into this celebration humbled, and it must humble itself before its members. Actually, the leadership must humble itself before the members and also before the people of this country.
And Prof, I'll ask, we'll get into what should be in the statement a little later on, but I'd like to latch on to something you said, which is talking about listening to people at grassroots level. We saw various NEC, members visiting different areas in Limpopo in the build-up to Saturday, and some of the traditional leaders as well as religious leaders are not happy with what is unfolding. And I'd like us to listen to what Bishop Edward Matlhagane had to say.
And Honorable Premier, one of the greatest things that we are worried about, it is the score of corruption that is so visible. It's so visible that you cannot even deny it. Even you try to cover it, its head comes out so ugly. So, Mr. President and Honorable Premier, tumamina. Sifunu bona le tumamina, rinyako bona tumamina.
Listening to that and a bit more of what some of these, some of the traditional leaders as well had to say, especially when it comes to the issues of land, and they're not happy with what is happening on the ground. I wonder, Prof, if, according to you, the ANC understands as the governing party the damage that corruption has caused.
Well, I think they do understand that. And I think the electorate has also sent a message if they are not willing to listen to the people on the ground around the issue of corruption. And it was the president of the ANC who went to the Zonal Commission and saying the ANC is the accused number one when it comes to corruption. So there is that acknowledgement. There's also nice words that are being said about dealing with it. But not so long ago, there was a recorded message or discussion where the president of the ANC indicated that he and other comrades of the ANC and cadres of the ANC know full well that state resources were actually used to support their political campaigns. So when you have a head of state and you have a president of the country saying something like that in that meeting, he's actually acknowledging that there is a corruption. But what will be problematic is that a head of state or any person of authority must also understand the law, which requires that once you see that there is corruption and you hear about corruption, you are obligated to report it. So we don't see that report having come out. What we get is an acknowledgement and admission that there is something like that. So when you talk about being against corruption, first you must actually walk the talk. It is not enough to simply say we're against corruption. People want to see you walk the talk. So the clip that you've put there simply says the ANC has become associated with corruption. So, and this is one of the things that the ANC must address.
Prof, on the same breath, the president says today, addressing these religious leaders, that he wants to end factions within the ANC. But I can't help but ask about this, because we're seeing an event that is hosted by the suspended Secretary General, Ace Magashule, in the very same province that the president is in, and that event is supposedly taking place tomorrow. Should we see this in isolation from the party's elective conference, or can we look at all of these issues in one view through the lens of the upcoming conference?
Well, the first thing that the ANC and the president must actually do, they must stop the group that is a triumphalist within the ANC. It is a group that seems to be almost determined to make sure that some members of the ANC are expelled. So once you start moving with suspensions, with expulsion, forget about the notion of renewal, forget about ending factions. The ANC needs to have a discussion among itself in terms of, yes, there may be mistakes, but how do we deal with it? You are not going to deal with them by being selective. You are also not going to deal with them by using state organs and state functions and state apparatus to deal with people. For instance, if you talk about it, that once people are charged, charging is a state function. And then you take a state function, then you use it to deal with your political opponents. When you do that, you are not going to address the issue of factions. Instead, what you are going to do is to cement a view that you are using state apparatus to deal with your opponents. So I do think that the electorate has said, despite your commitment or your statements, we don't actually believe you. So they need to say, maybe we need to do things differently, but more of the same is not going to help the ANC to get out of this political quagmire.
So, Prof, one of the reports, that are coming out from the build-up of those statements on the sidelines of the event that the Deputy President was attending yesterday, it says that, obviously the party is featuring, I'm sure you've seen the Zondo Commission's report as well. He says that this report is not going to divide the ANC. Do you agree with that?
Well, there are already people who are questioning within the ANC the report. And I think the people who are serious legal scholars will also start questioning some of the statements that are emerging from the report. Because, there's a statement that says, for instance, the former president fled the commission. And that is, for those of us who were watching that, we didn't see any person fleeing. What we saw was the former president challenging whether the issue of Zondo remaining as a chair when it came to him. So when Zondo goes out to present something that is questionable as the level of facts, it creates a problem. So there'll be a number of people who are going to challenge this report by Zondo in terms of issues of fact, but in terms of representation. But what other people are going to say, and they've already said, they say the report itself sounds very fictional. So the president of the ANC is correct to say, I want to be given time so that I can read it, but he has also a responsibility to make sure that the country moves forward. We have had 4 years of Zondo. We have had fightings within the ANC. If we want to take the country forward, we should not repeat what has actually happened. So it will be a challenge that the Deputy President is talking about to say, how do we make sure that the report does not lead to where there are divisions? Remember, the President of the ANC and of the country has also a responsibility to make sure that the the Republic is also stable, that it is united, that we're able to deal with the issues that have been sidelined. I mean, we're talking right now, economic inequalities. We're talking about unemployment. So we should not end up spending more time on side issues instead of addressing the various issues that the electorate said you are not addressing our concern. It's very important that how this report is handled, it's handled with the sensitivity to make sure that we move forward, but at the same time that we do deal with the historic injustice of the past. We redress those issues that we failed to address. And the ANC must, as it puts itself as a party that leads transformation, it must lead to transformation of society. We cannot go to a situation where we are actually regressing. So those are the challenges that it faces at the moment.
All right, Prof, thank you so much for your time this evening. That was political analyst Professor Sipho Seepe.